Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome to Shifting from Grudge to Good Grace Gratitude. I'm Anissa and I'm here with my beautiful co host Jamila. And we welcome back with the greatest of pleasure Samir Charles again to today. And this happened, I suppose, in the way that it's supposed to happen. Our other guest, Ruan is unfortunately not able to make it today due to not feeling too well. But I guess we will get Ruan on again, and Samir is going to try and cover most of this topic because he works within this realm. For that are joining us from Instagram and everywhere else, thank you. Please engage as you always do. And more importantly, if you're watching the replay, like Ronald will be, thank you for still coming to watch the replay. Ronald let us know he can't be here today. He's a regular on this session. So over to you, Jamila.
Yeah, hello everybody and welcome back to our podcast. We've got a little bit of a change, but I must also thank Samir for stepping in so late, and unfortunately Ruan couldn't make it because he's not well, as many of us have been suffering recently. I think it's with the change of weather or whether we're just working too hard and juggling too much, but so many people have been down with the flu, yourself and myself, Anissa. But having said that, we bounce back and we thank Samir for stepping into the rescue. And yes, I mean, it's a topic that I'm very interested to learn more about. And I'm so grateful that you will be sharing more on this. And on that note, I'll leave you to it, Samir.
So, Jamila, do you want to introduce the topic before we hand over to Samir?
Anissa, as I mentioned to you earlier, I'm totally unprepared for today. I literally don't have one sheet of notes in front of me. I ran through the door and just sat down. So if you don't mind, please, can you just lead with it? I do apologize.
No, that's fine. So you know what today's topic is. Do you want to kick off and just share some of your understanding and experiences around this topic? I absolutely love the little bit that I read up on it, but I'm going to leave it to you to kick off. You can go ahead, Samir.
So to be quite honest, when you sent me the message, I think yesterday evening, I went to go look at the page and I was like, I love talking to people and engaging, and I love the space that you guys have create and hold. And I was like, sure, I'll chat to them. Let me see what the topic is. When I had a look, I saw it was to do with the Rogers and the humanist approach. And then okay, I guess I have to do it now because I absolutely love Carl Rogers and his theories. And I've integrated it into the work I do as well. And I think one of the things that stood out about him for me, beside his theories, which was awesome, is that he was actually the first person to coin the term counseling, which is the space I'm in. Wow. So he actually coined that term counseling, because before counseling sprung up as we know it today, you had to be like a medical doctor in order to practice what was then psychotherapy. And he thought there's another way of doing things. And he started looking like at the person, or person-centered therapy, where he felt, I mean, in the work that I do also, you constantly see that there's like power dynamics at play in relationships, at work, at home. And I think I'm assuming now that his feeling was to disrupt the power dynamics so that it's not the professional who holds all the power. That's because, I mean, in the work we do, counseling, coaching, mental health, wellness, the reality is that, so I was actually telling one of my clients in the week that, yes, I am an expert in my field. I've studied various things, but I'm not the expert of you. You are actually the expert of yourself, and our job is to serve as a space holder, a catalyst, potentially a teacher or skill set developer. We're not the expert. The client themselves is the expert. And I think that also speaks into the Rogerian theory. So if we have to do theory, which you know I don't like delving into, but I'll just bring up 3 points, which is like what I feel is the core of the Dodgers. Um, and it's unconditional positive regard. So it's just basically holding a space of love, non-judgment, safety for an individual, having empathy or empathic understanding, and congruence or authenticity. And I think as far as theory goes, let's just highlight that element. And further than that, just have a conversation actually applying said theory and how it looks like in the real world environment.
Absolutely. I mean, when I looked at this, I went and found some beautiful quotes, and I want to read it because this resonated so deeply with me. It says here, the curious paradox is that when I accept myself just as I am, then I can change. And I think that speaks to you talking around being the expert of your own life, and you actually know who you instinctively are. And as much as others must have unconditional positive regard for you,
Yeah.
you need to have that for yourself. You need to have self-empathy. You need to show up with authenticity. That's just kind of weaving in the quote to your three theory points. And then the second quote was, being listened to by someone who understands. That's your holding the space aspect that you're speaking to. Makes it possible for persons to listen more accurately to themselves. Again, that weaves in the element of I'm the captain of my own ship, right? With greater empathy toward their own visceral experiencing, their own vaguely felt meaning. Such a powerful quote, but encapsulates everything that you just shared in the theoretical aspects of understanding Rogerian, humanistic, and psychoanalytic, because that was the topic theme today. And I was like, what? What is all this stuff? Can you speak English to me, please? And I mean, I have to tell my clients, listen, I don't work in the therapeutic realm, but we get exposed to some of these concepts and themes. But this was like foreign to me. And then when I unpacked it, it was really just, as you said, a client or person-centered approach rather, right? It's that the fact that people are most intrinsically motivated towards their own positive psychological functioning. None of us want to sit in darkness forever. So maybe you want to talk to that, Samir, and maybe you want to bring in some practical examples.
So I think based on what you were saying, I think it's really asking the question, am I living in a way which is deeply satisfying to me and which truly expresses me? And I think that's actually a Carl Dodge's quote as well. Um, because I think the Rogerian therapy, um, okay, I'm not going to blame the Dodgers because I have bought into a lot of it myself as well. And I feel that as human beings, we truly strive towards being the best possible version of ourselves in each moment. And I always add in each moment because if I don't, I myself um, stand at the risk of guilting, shaming the past versions of myself. But if I'm striving to be the best that I possibly can in each moment, that's irrespective of past or future. It's literally me with my energetic capacity, my current state, my current space. This is as much as I can show up, and that's enough. Actually, it's more than enough, because you're showing up in your fullness with your authenticity at any given time, which I think is important. You can't do any more than that. And a lot, I mean, so maybe I was more productive yesterday because I had a few other things to do today, and that's okay, that's fine. I don't have to beat myself up. Oh, I should have done more in these aspects. Like, you've done what you could, and it's also not using that idea as a cop out. So it's not like, it's like actually truly doing your best in each moment within that energetic capacity. So if you could do slightly more, slightly less, it's okay.
Anissa, I love those two quotes that you mentioned. I absolutely love it, especially the latter one. About and what you mentioned about us not wanting to be in darkness. We don't want to be in darkness, but we go about our lives with our eyes closed to who we truly are. And I feel like we just want to be the best that we can be for everyone else and to accommodate everyone else. But the real change comes when we can be the best that we can be for who we are. And that is only achieved through self-love and prioritizing self-love and self-acceptance and self-appreciation. And simplistically, I think we all just want a space to be in a space where we are heard and where we are seen. So for me, that's, I feel, the most simplistic way of looking at this topic is to be heard, to be seen, but to be open to the beauties and to be open to the strengths and all the amazing qualities that we have within ourselves. And the minute that we are able to do that, that's when we are able to serve at our best and help those around us.
Yeah, I have to agree. This holding of the space doesn't also always have to be in the darkness. And I just want to point that out. Sometimes we don't even want to share our light because of fear of being judged. And I find that if we can just be in allowance of our light, then that in and of itself creates another space I want to use where we could share without somebody wanting to hijack that space. But if we don't own our own light, most often people are drawn to want to hijack that space, be it in a therapeutic realm, yourself, Samir, as the counselor or therapist, be it as the coach, Jamila and myself, with that hat on. It's almost that we want to make others aware of that light, but we actually disempower them by doing that on their behalf. In the same way that we disempower when we try to rescue in that therapeutic or coaching space. So Samir, I want to get from you sort of like a practical, where have you found yourself knowing that this is better to be non-directive, which is more empowering? Where have you found yourself at a crossroads? Because as a coach, sometimes I feel there's a crossroads. I've got to take my coach hat off, and then I say to my client, well, okay, I'm going to not be the coach in this moment. In this moment, just for this moment. Again, we too, as the holders of the space, need to be authentic, right? So in those moments, I say, I'm going to have a mentor hat on right now. So I want you to describe to us, where have you been at that crossroads and how do you deal with it when you're not too directive?
So I think predominantly coaching is by design a lot more directive than counseling. because the focus is slightly different. And I think let's start there and then kind of build forward, because coaching is looking at where a client is right now and where they want to be, and assisting them to move from A to B. The notion of counseling is that we look at where a client is and how they can adapt to their current situation, and how past is potentially affecting them from being where they are moving forward. So it's like there is an interlap between the two, because for me, I see it as a dance. And I think I'm blessed to be both, or have two different hats I can wear as the counselor and the coach,
Yeah.
because I see it as this dance of, sometimes in order for us to move forward, we need to release what we're holding onto so that we can actually do so. And so for me, the work is partly healing from past incidents, faulty beliefs, needing to process certain emotions, or actually feeling said emotions, processing thoughts or beliefs that aren't adding value to our lives or the lives of those around us, and actually hindering that growth and transformation. And the other foot is actually looking at embracing deeper connections, more fulfillment, more satisfaction. And I think both of these elements are actually held within a person. So we have beautiful shades, and we have shades that are slightly uglier, and we tend to veer deeply into one or the other. And I think our integrity, our congruence, and our authenticity is held where we integrate the two together, because all of it is us. So, so
Yeah.
in session, there have been sessions where I can see the answer for a client, and I actually have to hold off on saying, just do this thing, because for me to share that would be me demonstrating my power as well. Because now I'm telling you to do that. So if it goes well, yes, Amir helped. If it goes badly, oh, it was Amir's fault. And it takes away accountability and responsibility of a person, because now they're giving their power to me instead of claiming it for themselves. So I know it sounds slightly counterintuitive, because it's basically showing you're not going to tell the person what they must do, you're going to guide them to that for themselves. But then it actually teaches them the process of being able to seek for themselves.
Yeah,
Jamila, do you want to
agree
Because
with
one
respond?
of
you
the
on that.
things that I do in my work.
Mm.
Go on.
Go for it, Samir.
Oh, one of the things that I believe in the one of the things I believe in the work that we do is that part of our job is to make ourselves redundant as quickly as possible, so that the client can do those processes without the need to definitely have us there. Like, sure, later on, maybe top up the cups, touch base, but they're able to do it for themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
I'm
I
not sure
agree
if
with
my
you
line
that
was bouncing slightly.
I think it is. I think you're a little bit delayed. Anissa, are you finding that too?
I'm also
Is it?
finding it here. Like we interject, but then you only hear it, I think, like 30 seconds later. But okay, we'll handle that as we go along. Go for it,
Yeah.
Jamila.
So I think that in our line of business, we get a whole different plethora of people or clients that come to us with different objectives in mind. And we go through certain processes and express to them the different tools that they can use in order to equip themselves better to deal with life and to deal with issues that they're going through. And at sometimes, yes, for sure, you've got to be take a directive stance, Anissa, but there are other times where I find, and this differs from client to client, where it's also just mood dependent. It's where they just basically are at that time, where someone might come in and they just don't want to speak, or they are extremely emotional, and you have to allow them that space to be able to just sit in the silence, but they're sitting in that silence with someone. So it becomes a safe place for them, or they're just sitting in that space and just letting go of their emotions and giving into the emotions and crying. Or so I think it varies from client to client and from time to time, but you have to balance the two of being directive in your approach and also just allowing according to what their human emotional state is and needs are at that time. So the holding of space for me is very, very important, and it doesn't have to necessarily have anything being said at that time, but it's just a space which is a healing space, and I think it is a very underrated. But even just sitting in the silence, but it's sitting in the silence with someone has an extremely healing component to it. So for me, that's the empathic also approach to take, where you don't have to be saying anything. Today is not a lesson for us to tell you what tools you need to cope with procrastination or self-image issues or anything like that. Sometimes people come to you highly emotional, and your space then is for them to allow themselves to just be vulnerable and raw and just, bare their souls to you.
I share your sentiments on that completely, Jamila, because from my training 15 years ago, it was, hey, you don't. And Samir, it's interesting that you have a view that coaching is directive. I just want to say that thing as a starting context. My training, and I don't know about Jamila's training, was that you are not meant to be directive. You are not meant to be guiding and giving the options or solutions, because you're also going to be coming from your own lens, which is also your own agenda. So when my first formal training happened, that was what was almost ingrained in us, because your belief systems and your narratives linked to those beliefs is different. So it's almost, how dare you come along and give your perspective or viewpoint or direct and guide when this person's world and the way they view the world, their perceptions and their perspectives on things is vastly different. So it would be incongruent, number one, there already. So it's not really about being sort of only giving tools and frameworks. When I take myself back, fast forward to where I am now in my career, I've had to learn different modalities in coaching. And I don't have a one-size-fits-all approach either. It's like Jamila actually says, you've got to, and I'm sure you do it as well, Samir, we've got to assess where the client is in that moment. Their energy, do they feel disempowered or self-limiting in their thought? And do you actually allow that, Samir? Because like you said, quite frankly, that's part of who we are, and we need to be in acceptance of those moments. So I just want to say that it's when we find the need to be directive, it is almost asking permission if we may be. I'm always asking permission to do so, because again, ego plays a big role and power is linked to that ego. I have the answers. I'm trained. I have so many tools and frameworks. I. And there's a fine line in that. And I loved what you said, Samir, You said that, I can't remember your exact words, but if I have to reframe it in my own language, it is make them autonomous so that they don't need you, right? So that they have carte blanche, they have power over how their life needs to be lived.
Mm.
So I'm going to
Yeah.
leave that there with you to ponder, Samir, and respond to.
So I think what's come up for me is also when engaging with a client, it's always that realization that the space is theirs. You simply holding it for and with them.
Mm,
And whenever we engaging them, before choosing directive or non-directive approaches, it's to ask the question, who is this for? So am I putting things in the space to show I'm cool, I've got this, look at all these awesome techniques? Or is it this feeling innately of this would best serve the client? And also, like
mm,
you were saying, the asking of permission. Are you okay with me bringing this into the space? And for me, I also love, besides asking, letting my clients know that what I'm sharing with them is based on what I've learned, my experiences, and my perception. And I think it could assist. And if it doesn't, that's okay, because they need to take and potentially apply only what works for them. And if it doesn't, please let it go, put it on the side, chuck it if necessary. That's okay, because it's not about myself as the therapist or counselor, it's purely about the client. And I do my best to maintain the space for the client. If there's in, I mean, as a therapist or coach, there are moments you will be triggered. And I think it's so important to be aware of your triggers so that when you are triggered, you understand how you behave and you can put that aside, because the space is the client's, it's not yours. Then you take
mm,
what
mm,
has been triggered after the session, process it on your own a little bit, take it to supervision or mentorship or to your own
mm.
therapist, because that's where the self-work in our industry comes in. And I think that's such a huge component of the work as well, like actually doing our own work. Because
Yeah.
I've been with therapists and coaches for a variety of things, to basically help with my own self work. And I found that therapists, coaches, counselors who are doing their own self work, they've been able to assist me in ways that people who aren't doing their work couldn't. Um, and you actually feel it during sessions as well. Like this person isn't projecting their things onto me, or there's no agendas that's present, because they actually hold you. They're not triggered by you projecting their stuff. And I think it's so important to acknowledge our humaneness. And if we do mess up in a session, actually acknowledge it, bring it up with the client, and apologize if necessary. Because I think that then later also emulates that it's okay to make mistakes because we are human. And this is how we can go about apologizing and engaging with people.
Mm. I think, Anissa, for me, the reason why this work is so fulfilling is because I feel so extremely enriched by the experiences of my clients who come to me, and it's not it's not a scenario of I've learned this, I know this, I've got this qualification, or all the rest, any of that. It's one human being to another sharing your experiences. And when you sit across from a client and you listen to them, and as you say, you have certain triggers, but that's all learning more about yourself and how to go through those layers, how to work through it, and to come out on the other side as a better person. So for me, the exchange is just so valuable in what we ourselves learn from this, because I don't like looking at myself as a coach or I'm all about well-being and wellness and mental wellness and advocacy about that. And I believe that we are all here as human beings sharing our experience and using those experiences to help and assist each other. And I feel like it's a two-way street here, because it might seem as if, a client's coming to you, and you are there to offer all of your wisdom and your experience and your knowledge and all the rest of it, but it is actually an exchange in which we also benefit from it.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because like one of the things that when I'm sure most of us will know this term, either some call it a discovery conversation, some call it a chemistry conversation. I find that I set the scene up front and I say that this is a thinking and an accountability partnership. It's a partnership. And that I'm neither above you and neither below you. And that we always walk alongside one another on this journey. And I find that almost sets the context for a beautiful symbiotic relationship. There's no power struggle. And what I want to just say is it's interesting that we are having this conversation from this vantage point, from this point of view. Is that normally we would, the client, I would love to actually speak to a client that have experienced this type of approach, the Rogerian approach, and maybe bring them in and saying, how do they feel on the receiving end of it? What I'm loving about this discussion is that we are almost holding one another accountable here and in this moment now. We're almost creating this space to say, where do we still need to learn, grow, and maybe even unlearn to relearn, right? And Samir, you said something quite profound. Don't wait till after a session. If you know you've made that mistake in that moment, it's actually okay to say it there and then. But often, what do? We're like, oh crap, we shouldn't have maybe said that, or oh, I might have overstepped something there, but we carry on. So your humility as a hybrid role, as you call yourself, a coach and a therapist, it's amazing that it shines through, Samir, because not everyone does that. Not everyone would say, actually, let me step in this moment here and now. And not take time to go first reflect on it, because the power in cultivating even deeper trust with that person in front of you is unparalleled to you thinking you're coming with all your expertise and know-hows, right?
I think it's also fascinating because on this journey, this path that we're on this, I refer to it as like this path of love and healing. It's like the more you engage with people and the more you learn different things, the more you realize you actually have no idea about anything. And there was actually a quote also by Rogers that I found quite fascinating. And I'm going to read it out. He says, if I let myself really understand another person, I might be changed by that understanding, and we all fear change. So, as I say, it is not an easy thing to permit oneself to understand an individual. And I thought that kind of feeds into what both of you have been
Mm.
saying as well, that what do we call it? That this reciprocity, that exchange of or energetic exchange between therapist and client, or in fact human beings, because it's a
Yes.
learning process that we all go through together. And I agree. I would also apologize in the session, because it's not showing. It's not you messing up the session. It is truly enriching it, because it's showing I'm also human. Because I've
Mm.
had many clients, in conversations with other counselors as well, where clients think that if you're a coach or a counselor, your life must be perfect. You have all the skills, all the tools, all the knowledge. Your life must be amazing.
Oh my God, that's true.
So true.
And I was
Oh
joking the
gosh.
other day saying, I have these skills, I can communicate nicely and all of this, but a, a lot of the time it's within the therapeutic setting. If you look at outside of it, that hat's off. Now I'm
Mm.
daddy, husband, son, sibling, a whole range of other things. And yes, the skill sets do help, but they're not always there, because I think when you go into a session, there's like that flip that switches. Now it's like I'm in the mode, in the zone. Outside of it, you don't always communicate the best. Um, and it's like you'll
Yeah.
tell a client, when we communicate, these are the tools, these are the things we do. Later on in the day, you're like, I should have probably followed what we were sharing there.
That's so relatable, Samir. That's relatable. I don't know, Jamila. Like I often say, like, gosh, can I not practice what I preach? And I mean, like, I'm, I'm not, like telling my clients to do this, and then I fail dismally on it. Especially close to home on the home front. And then you're like, really? What's wrong with you? And then the judgment comes in. It's like, ah. But I guess you're right. It's that there's actually an enrichment because
Mm.
in the the flawedness of it all, we get to see where we can still grow. And it's nothing wrong with it. But yes, I'm chuckling quite a bit right now because that's quite a valid point.
And Anissa, it's amazing how when we are able to recognize the judgment that we place on ourselves and
Yes.
we forgive ourselves for it, it becomes so much more easier for us to
Yes.
acknowledge and be aware of judging others, but also
Yeah.
to give them that allowance for their experience
Mm.
without the judgment. But it's only once we
Hmm.
can recognize it within ourselves and forgive ourselves for it that we can offer that to someone else. So,
Spot on.
it's like you say, Samir, people think, oh, you're a coach, so your life must be perfect. But it's the furthest from the truth because we're already in that process of
Oh
unlearning
my
and
gosh.
relearning. So that
Yes.
comes with a whole new set of experiences, a whole new lot of insecurities, but we acknowledge it and we're aware of it, and that's in itself is the progress that we go along. But it by certainly doesn't mean, by no means does it mean that we have a perfect life.
Yeah, and the awareness is even greater, right, for us because we
Yes,
know where we falter. So
yes,
the reality is that you almost have this lens of scrutiny on you. It's like the spotlight shining on you. So the minute you tread the wrong way, it's like, oops, surely you should have known better there.
correct.
And
But
it's
it's also
bizarre.
as you say, Anissa, we are, the more we learn, the more
Mm.
the more we educate ourselves, the more you realize how little you know.
Yes. To Samir's point, right?
Yes,
Nothingness. If we can
exactly.
know that we know nothing,
Yeah,
and
then
yeah.
I think
that is progress and success, I think.
and I think that there's like two parts of it. So it's like we we aren't perfect because we're also flawed and we realize we know nothing. But then also for a counselor, coach, therapist, or someone who has developed skill sets in this field or in this area rather, it also becomes challenging when you think I should know better, yet I
Mhm.
still did X, Y, and Z, especially in
Mhm.
relationships, because you can see um, the reason that a partner, child, sibling, or an individual, why they're behaving in the way they are. So it's like I understand and can be completely empathic. So I shouldn't feel this frustration and this anger, but I am. And there's like that risk of shaming oneself because I shouldn't be feeling this because I understand, I truly do, and it's okay that that's how they're behaving based on all those things. I need to figure out what to do with this anger instead of I'm acknowledging this frustration, this anger, and it's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, listen, I just want to acknowledge we've got Hayat here from Algeria that's joined us on Instagram. Thank you for being here, sister. Hayat is from our Zen coaching group, Jamila, with
Yes.
Rashad's group. So thank you for being here and joining us. There's very little interaction and comments today. So either the conversation is interesting and you want to hear more and only hear our voices, but in fact, you're only going to hear our voices, but we want to hear your voices too. So share your comments or your experience, or just tell us what you want to hear more from this conversation. And on that note,
Or just
Samir,
say hello to us, and just
or just say hello. You're silent there. And even though Jamila said it's okay to be in silence, we do want to know that you're here with us so that we can know who we're sitting in silence with.
yeah.
Anyway,
I
Jamila,
think
anything
Anissa
from your side?
also, yeah. It's so funny because we have these experiences that we go through, and sometimes we say, "Why is this happening to me? Why is this it always happens to me?" But I think, you know, I also just learning more about myself and learning about my world around me, I realized that there's lessons that I haven't picked up on yet. And in
Mm-hmm.
my experience now, that's what I'm questioning myself. Not why is this happening to me? I always have bad luck. This always, is the case for me. I ask myself, what is the lesson in this that I'm not learning so that I can move past this experience and not have it repeat itself again? So it's about the self discovery. It's about the way you look at yourself and your experiences that it just helps you go through life a lot more. And this word's coming up so much today, enriched.
Mm.
Um, and whether it's supposedly a negative experience or a positive experience, you no longer look at it in that way, but you look at it through a different lens of self-discovery and of learning more about your experience, about your existence, about your purpose. And for me, that's been such a truly uplifting um, part now of my life, where this is my mindset. This is how I prefer to look at things. And it just helps me to remove the judgment first and foremost from myself. And I found that I've gone through life with so much of anxiety that I've created for myself because I've judged myself so harshly.
Mm.
So I've tried to become a lot more kinder to me, a lot more non-critical to myself, and it's made such a huge difference. And it's those kind of experiences that we share as coaches or, mentors or partners with people who have come into our lives, um,
Mm.
that helps them see life from a different perspective, um, as opposed to us being more directive towards people. So for me, it's a sharing of
Mm.
experiences, of the lessons that we learned and the ones that we continue to experience going forward. And there'll always be those because we're never going to be perfect. It's like the more we learn, the more we know that we realize we don't know. So it's a journey. It's a journey that never ends. But it's a journey towards fulfilling enrichment, I think.
Jamila, you highlighted something that I want Samir just to comment more to. You spoke about self-discovery, and I almost feel that the Carl Rogers model of Rogerian is actually just that, isn't it, Samir? So self-discovery, link that for me with this philosophy or this approach from Carl Rogers.
So I think Jamila actually articulated it quite beautifully. And it's so similar to what Carl Rogers says anyways, that the good life is a process, not a state of being. It is a direction, not a destination. The only person who is educated is the one who has learned how to change, how to learn and change. When I look at the world, I'm pessimistic. But when I look at people, I'm optimistic. That's one of his quotes.
Powerful. It's so powerful. Just say that last part again. I just want to kind of embody it a bit more. Just say the last part. When I look at the world, I'm pessimistic, you said.
I'm pessimistic. But when I look at people, I'm optimistic.
Sure. There's a lot of depth in that, eh?
Absolutely.
But what does it take to get to that level, though? You know, I'm just thinking, and that's why I asked you to just repeat it. Because when we look at the world and we're pessimistic, it's because of the state of the world, the things that are happening, etc., etc. But isn't it then supposed to, is it supposed to be that when you look at people, or is it supposed to be that you're okay no matter what the state of the world is in, that you can be balanced and composed regardless, and at peace and in acceptance of? I'm wanting to unpack that a bit more, because that for me, it's a little bit sitting conflicting with me, because if I'm not able to be okay with what the world and the state is in, it means that I'm sitting in dis-ease and conflict. So am I saying, and please explain this to me, Samir, because I'm really trying to understand this Rogerian humanistic psychoanalytics approach. If he's saying that concept, is he saying we must rather connect more meaningfully with one another than view the world and the state that it's in? Otherwise, we will go into an abyss.
I think, sorry, Samir, before you answer, maybe any of our viewers or listeners, if you guys have any input on this or your opinions on it, please do share with us. But Samir, back to you.
So I think that the Rogerian theory, which is steeped in the humanist or humanistic psychology, views humans as inherently positive and kind of stresses the importance of growth and self-actualization. And his theory, or he suggests that we all have this inherent drive to be better and to become better, which I think it was Maslow so Maslow and Carl Rogers are like the two fathers of humanistic or human psychology. And Maslow then broke it into the 5 levels of, or the hierarchy of needs rather, and was saying that we can't immediately go towards self-actualization or individuation or being the best that we can. There's certain rungs that we need to step through or dance through first. And I think it was actually one of the critiques of Dodge's work, where they said an article was saying that it's too vague. So it's not something that can actually be measured. And
Okay.
personally, I can understand where the critique came from, because our subjective realities are different and it can't be the same.
Yeah.
How do we measure a subjective experience? But I think that's where the beauty of it lies, that it's not prescriptive, or it doesn't have, like, it has the framework which is filled up by the human. It doesn't have like steps that you need to follow that's right or wrong per se.
Mm.
And I think that it's looking at the beauty of our humaneness and the connection of our humaneness that brings about the shifts, the change. Because I like the idea that we are inherently positive. But that's also my biases based on my beliefs steeped in spirituality, believing that there is a higher power, the universe, God. I mean, there's many terms that different people use to unpack that being, the creator. And I feel that that divine essence is something that's within us all, and that we all
Mm.
have an innate desire to want to connect more deeply with that. So, more deeply with ourselves and with that, and then also everybody else. So, potentially,
Mm.
that's what he was referring to. There's no theory or anything that speaks into that. That's just my own interpretation.
I think for me, my interpretation of it, Anissa, would be where I think the pessimistic part of it would be where you are perhaps observing ego and judgment and
Mm.
um, shadow self, as much as we know that it's part of who we are and we need to embrace it and all the rest of it. But that's the perception that I seem to get, as opposed to feeling positive about who we innately are, as you say, what the true essence of us is, and how we as human beings are naturally created to be good and have all these divine qualities within us. And for me, that would be the comparison between the pessimism and the optimism. But it's obviously open to a lot of different interpretations. But for me, that kind of
Yeah.
makes the most sense to me.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. It leaves room for interpretation, because for me
Yeah.
it was like, from my lens, it's like, oh, hold on, I shouldn't be allowing myself to be um, going through dis-ease of sorts because of what the state of the world is in, because that's setting myself up for suffering, right? Because the promise we have is life is always going to throw us curveballs, and there's always going to be craziness all over the world, whether it's in politics, whether it is in religion, whether, regardless of the context, we can be assured of the unpredictability of life and what it throws at us. So why I had this visceral response to that quote, Samir, was more around, but hold on. If we get to that point of Maslow's hierarchy theory around towards closer, more, I won't say, I don't believe we self-actualize. I think it's a continuous journey, and and we know it's sort of also not a linear journey, right? But I feel that if we more conscious, I would say, and there's greater awareness, and we're closest to that stage of understanding self, mastering self, not yet self-actualized. Again, I don't like the idea of saying we self-actualized. Um, but I feel at that point is almost that separation around knowing that I feel it's the opposite. I might be more disappointed in my experiences with how people show up, but I could be empathetic and understanding that it's based on maybe potentially their level of awareness, their self-work, their consciousness, and their judgment lens of self and of others. So that is why this is sitting so, and I'm going to explore it more, because obviously that's something that I need to go and explore right now, to say, why am I seeing this as an opposing feeling to it? Because I'm kind of saying that no matter what happens, you stay equanimous, you stay calm, composed, because you know the storm will pass. But what I've also learned is that we should have no expectations or attachment to how people show up. So this is why I'm just sharing it with you, Jamila and Samir and the audience here, because it's kind of sitting a bit. I need to go sit with this now.
Yeah, it's our
Your
journey,
response,
isn't
Samir.
it? It's our journey to
Yes.
come back to the core of who we are and who we were born to be. Because as we go along in life, we attach all of these behaviors and layers and patterns and the attachments, and with it comes the suffering, and that I see as the world. Okay, and that world then is seen for me in a very pessimistic way because of all those attachments that we
Yes.
accumulate. But when I look at people and the innate nature of people, which is the journey we take to get back to that space, that initial space. And when I think of that is the positivity, that is the optimism that I would see.
Okay. And yours, Samir, in relation to that quote?
Man, I don't know. I personally, it's like I do my best to maintain a positive mental frame, and when it comes to like optimism or pessimism, I think I'm in like the healthy middle. Is that even healthy? See, that's the thing. It's like which is the path? Like, do we cultivate optimism or
Yes.
positivity so that we can feel all happy and jubilant all the time? Or do we go with the pessimistic? Because speaking to a pessimist, they wouldn't say, I'm not pessimistic. I'm actually a realist. I'm practical. This is just how things are. So it's how I will do it. You speak to
That's
the
true.
optimist, then it's like, this is all happy, joyful. This is just how life is. So I think it depends on, like, I haven't spoken to Carl Dodgers, so I'm not sure how exactly he showed up, but it sounds like he is someone who was relatively positive and was really hopeful for humans and looked at the beauty and the wonder, the splendor within all of us. And I think
Yes.
that's why he views hope as he looks at people. And I think for me personally, when I think of the world, I see it as something that's a part of me and that I'm a part of. Because so the three of us are having a conversation with the listeners and everybody, but I think that we live in three different worlds that intersect at different points. Because it's like
Yes.
my self structure makes up my world viewed through my lens. And when we come together, our worlds intersect and impact and affect each other, which then shifts my world and your worlds and so forth. And I think that's where hope potentially lies also. Because as we unify or come together and impact each other more deeply in more meaningful ways, we learn more about ourselves. We can connect more deeply with ourselves and see ourselves more fully in our wholeness or integrity, and vice versa. We can also connect more deeply with other people to create that or manifest our dreams on earth, because I feel it's something we do together and separately.
Yes, absolutely. I agree on that. I agree on that, and it's our path towards higher consciousness, right? Our individual paths to higher consciousness, which leads us then to attracting like-minded people or who vibrate on the same frequency as you. And for me, that is the positivity that I see in the people. Because as I move along each stage of my life, I'm becoming more enriched, more educated, more connected to people who are already so much further along in their journey towards consciousness, and together we come together for a collective consciousness. And that collective consciousness is what then changes that whole pessimistic worldview that we have, which relates to Maslow's theory as well, right? About coming to collective consciousness. But it is also an individual journey that we take. But the positivity, I feel, lies in the likes of all of us coming together and putting together our individual personal journeys to get to a raised position of higher consciousness.
Beautifully stated, Jamila and Samir. I'm still going to do some work on myself while that's sitting with me like that, but I think you've concluded it beautifully for today, in that it is about unity consciousness. It is about seeing the best in everyone all of the time, even if they're not at their best in those moments. So what do you want to leave the audiences, because we've reached the hour, I can't believe it. What do you want to leave today, Samir and Jamila, as last parting wisdom and nuggets?
I'll let you go first, Samir.
Okay. For me, I think that it is our divine essence, our humanity and humaneness that ties us together. And I think that this theory and just lessons that I've learned in life has brought me to the notion that this is how we should be connecting. Because it's like we are all basically like trees. And the more deeply rooted we are in ourselves, the less the external wind would be able to uproot us. And it's only once we rooted firmly, deeply, that we can share our fruits with the world. I think I would like to leave it right there.
That's
Thank
so
you.
beautiful.
I absolutely love that.
Jamila, we're going to have to go back and listen to that and transcribe it, because it's just so amazing, Samir. Thank you for that beautiful nugget there and wisdom.
Yeah. I think also, Anissa, when we look at the world in a very pessimistic manner because of certain experiences that we've gone through, I can bear testament to this. You want to isolate yourself. You want to remove yourself from everyone else. But I think when you come to an understanding and awareness, and where you do the work and you realize who it is that you are, you understand what a tiny, small, little particle you are in a much more majestic, wonderful, unbelievable, divine collective. And that you may be that small part of it, but you are a part of it that makes that whole. And without you, the whole is not the whole anymore. So I think that we should go about forgiving ourselves, accepting ourselves, loving ourselves in the true divinity that we were experienced, and to extend that to those around us with no judgment and with love.
Much more wisdom there as well. We've reached, like 1 minute, 1 hour and almost 5 minutes, and I don't want to say goodbye to anyone just yet, but I do feel for those that want to go back and just listen in, go into the 1 minute, 1 hour and 3 minutes, so that you can hear both the nuggets from Samir and Jamila again. And it's interesting to close off today. I want to just say that, firstly, thank you for sharing such wisdom and speaking from your heart always. I always find that this conversation is always heart-centered. It's not head-centered. And that's beautiful. And when we're in our heart, I'm going to bring it back to the theme of why we're here today, is we're able to shift from grudge to grit, grace, and gratitude. So on that note, from me, I thank those that are silent participants that are here. And we still value your presence. And thank you, Samir, for being here with us. In fact, I just want to put it out there that I think Samir will be joining us more often, Jamila. I feel that he's got a wealth and breadth of knowledge to share, but a humility that shines through. And I'd like to invite him more. So I'm going to end our live. If there's anything else anyone wants to say, please go ahead and say so now.
Just to say thank you again,
for
Samir, for stepping in and coming to our rescue at this late hour. But I echo Anissa's sentiments, and I do hope that you will consider joining us a lot more in the future. And we do really, truly appreciate your humility and your kindness and the wisdom that you share with us.
Samir.
Thank you both. I think I sit in awe when I share the space with you, and sometimes I catch myself just sitting and listening, and then Anissa asks a question, and I'm like, I was so absorbed in what you guys were sharing, I haven't even thought about it yet. So thank you for having me and just having this beautiful space. I think it's definitely sharing something of immense value with people. It's beautiful.
Thank you, Samir.
Thank you.
Goodbye for now, everyone. Until next week, we'll see you again. And as usual, Jamila, I know you've got some paddle, exciting stuff happening, tournaments. I'm not going to keep you long. I'm going to end the live on that note.
Thank you. Thank you.